And this is Desiree. She does our interface with the general ledger and does a lot of the problem solving. But I think you know everyone else. I do. This is Kim.
Danielle's on. And Desiree works for.
FM Brian.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
Or
I don't know if I've met you either.
I'm Mike.
Mike. Okay. I'm in user service finances.
Okay.
So.
You haven't met either. Sorry.
That's okay. And I do energy mostly accounting.
Okay. Great.
Everybody else?
Yep. I got everybody else. We're good. We're good.
And we're recording this one, right?
We are recording this one.
All right.
So this was a debits and credits part 2 discussion. So I think there were additional pieces we wanted to talk about. So I don't know, did we want to get into Compass to show some additional pieces?
Yes, we did. All right, let me get logged in.
I think you can get Compass on here, but I don't know if it's test. It might be production.
I can get into here. It's a P versus a T on the website.
If it makes it easy.
All right. I haven't done it on here, so it should be whatever. Come on. I have to cancel the first program. I can do this because I can't actually. All right, I think I'm there.
So we had originally had a meeting where Janet had demonstrated some of the debit and credit functionality, some of the transaction functionality within Compass. And we had the functional design sessions this week. And there were additional questions that came up, and so we thought we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into what we do and talk about some of the more specific types of transactions that we have and how the account codes are tied to those transactions and things like that. Take it away.
So I'm going to let you drive to see where you want to go look, or how do we want to, do you want to bring up the 4 items related to credit and debit? And I'll switch back up. Actually, I'll just have it here on my screen.
Oh, then you can ask.
I'll just point to you if that's all right. No, you can point. That's fine. All right. Sorry, it's connecting. Okay. So let me just. Oh, it's still working. Start looking at here. We're going to look at. We're going to go where the heck they are. Can you filter in Google Docs when it's on screen like this? You'd have to add filter in to it, and then, yeah. So I think I have some other tools for, check one of those. There it is. There we go. I like to go with F11. And then do your little arrow, double arrows on the right-hand side. And then should give me enough real estate.
Did Tracy join?
Yep.
Okay. There's Tracy and Danielle, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Their names were on the list, the participant list on
Okay.
the
Actually,
call-in.
she emailed, she didn't have a link, that's why I was asking.
Oh, okay.
So she must have got it then.
Okay, just scroll down, there's the okay button. Nope. Nope. Oh, it's running. You know, hooked directly to the network, you think it'd be faster. It's raining. That usually slows any network down. Okay, I usually slow it down because we're...
Not raining very hard.
It's raining somewhere else. When I worked for the state of Texas, our WAN ran across the street under these apartments.
Heard of it.
Whenever it would rain, our network would appreciably slow down.
Yeah. Really? Yeah. They had to dig that whole thing up, didn't they?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Where was this? Texas. Oh.
Why does it slow down so much?
Yeah, what happened was they started to build the apartments not knowing that the WAN was there, and then chopped the entire...
Yeah. Go straight down, and
Yeah.
it cost the state
A boatload of money.
boatload of money.
Yep.
Because the apartment complex got the permit and everything.
There was an okay button on the bottom.
Got the okay. It was,
I know that.
yeah, messy.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's talk about, I'm on notifications. Let's talk about not review and validate. So deceptive content, yeah, I don't think you can't show me the perceptive content stuff. Yeah. That would be something Sylvia would have to do at her desk.
Well, I
How that-
thought we were just talking about debits and credits.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going through the
That's
list. Post debits and credits for financial transactions in the general finance process, maps and activities. So can we just talk about it in a generic way? That would be great.
You want to talk about the process that they go through to get it all the way through?
Yeah. That's right.
Okay. The process that you go through.
Hey, Kim, is there a speaker or something y'all could pull closer to because it just sounds really low? Thank you.
Whoever, no, it's fine. Is it just walking through the process, like in Compass, like what I actually do?
Yes.
So there's a drop down for GL extract.
Oh, we can put that up there. I don't know if you want to talk about the exception process that you go through.
Yeah,
first.
so what I do is, well, the exception comes at the end of the extract, but so we take everything out of Compass, and then it gets dumped into PDI, and PDI will recognize if there's an error before it goes to EFS, and the exception report is the list of errors that I get.
Okay.
This is what you're talking about?
Yep. So you first create journal entries, and then it pulls everything, and I run a report in BI. After that, it's called the post-extract report to catch anything, and then if that's all good, then you export to GL.
So when she does the create journal entries, it's going to each of the transaction types and looking at the transactions that meet the criteria for ready to be billed, and it creates that financial detail transaction line.
Okay.
There's some processing that goes through to flag anything that's errored, which then she'll get a report, and if there's an error, she then has the ability to roll it back, which undoes everything. She can go back into the system, make the correction, and run it again, and then make sure it runs clear. Once it runs clear, then she does the export to GL, that sends to PDI, and it goes through its own validation, and then I have no idea what they do to fix all that.
report looks like?
Some of them.
Yeah, the first one.
Oh, yeah, I can show you the one in PI, but I don't know if there'll be anything on it right now.
PDI is the PeopleSoft data interface, which is an auxiliary services tool that a lot of youth services departments use to facilitate interfacing transactions into PeopleSoft. So we're just using that tool and creating a batch within there. And so the problem is, in a lot of cases, PDI does a full budget check on every account string that we're processing transactions on that we don't do until it gets into PDI. So we run into issues in fixing transactions at that point in time because we've already sent stuff to PDI. So fixing our source information becomes a bit of an issue when we make a change in PDI to get it to flow to PeopleSoft. So that's why we've talked about the purple box to have only valid account strings in theory within Tririga, so that we minimize that perpetual fixing cycle.
Because then you have to fix 3 spots too. You fix the work order, there's a journal entry feature in Compass that you do, and then you fix it in PDI as well.
Okay, so right now you're doing 3 places.
So when you reference an account string, is that your general ledger ID, or does that include some other information like that?
It's a complete account string, I guess, from referencing the department that we're charging, the actual account value, so repair and maintenance versus supplies, you know. So it's a pretty comprehensive list of different individual fields. So I think our account string has 13 different fields on it potentially.
And they're all in that PDF that we guys talked about the other day.
Sending it now.
But not all of them have all the fields.
Right.
Correct. There's some that are required.
Sure. So some. Okay. Got it.
PeopleSoft does a complete validation though on all of the fields. So if someone were using all of the fields, that would have to be every one of those fields would have to be a valid account string as far as PeopleSoft was concerned in order for that transaction to go through.
And I think those are the ones that get caught in PDI, or when you
Yeah.
put them together and they don't make a valid account string. We don't catch that in Compass because we have that feature off.
Right.
So
We catch some stuff in this first report. This will catch some Compass errors, and then PDI gets kind of that final validation for the open budget line.
yeah. So this one here is looking actually at the source transactions before she does and creates the line item, and it just is validating each specific account segment separately to say, is that an active segment? And it's looking at that, and then it's also looking at effective dating. So if this is for a transaction that was before, and it only has the date being active as of today, it will catch those as well. Most of those are miscellaneous costs where people can manually type in a date and get the date wrong.
Like the year on it.
And the year and some other stuff.
What do you mean by the effective date? Are you talking about the effective date of the transaction?
Account string,
the
the account string says it is valid as of this date, and the date of the transaction is prior to that.
And it's not the account string, but the account field. The specific fields all have effective dates on them.
Yeah. So
So it's like something where
well, I mean, essentially what they should be doing is on that combo edit, there's a PeopleSoft job that goes in and does like a combo edit, something that PDI kind of tries to mimic. So based off of that information, that's when we, from the PDI perspective, we identify what's a valid chart string based off of that effective date. Now the effective date should always be July 1. If somebody's put in an effective date on a chart string, outside of that, it would have to be a sponsored account rather than a non-sponsored account. So that would be really one of the only other exceptions. That and a cost share.
So does the effective date correlate with the approval date by any chance? I mean, is that considered when like the final approval is, or is that when it's just effective for submittal for approval?
The date chosen by whoever's setting up the.
Each transaction has its own transaction. So labor has a date that it uses, invoice has a date that each of them, transaction specific, what date gets into that transaction date field.
Is there something that you're showing on a computer?
Yeah, Tracy, I had sent you the link to the WebEx.
Well, I'm on the WebEx, but there's just nothing. We're just listening to talking, so there's not anything we're seeing. There we go. Now we see Google.
Now? All right.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry about that.
Let me go for you.
I just thought we were still having a conversation, so good call, Tracy. Thanks.
Well, occasionally I'd hear like the word, well, like this, and I'm like, okay, there's got to be something they're looking at here.
Yeah, so we were looking at the first exception report that we run that just strictly looks at Compass, individual field effective date.
And what's the percentage of transactions do you think you correct on every batch? What's the frequency of the batch?
It's after every payroll date.
So every 2 weeks, and then generally once at the end of the month to catch anything else. So we generally do 3 a month.
And how many of them? How many errors?
It just depends. Like now that we're in the new fiscal year, because Compass closed yesterday, it's going to be probably, it could be like 8 to 10 pages just because of budgets not being open. But towards my last one that I just did was one page.
Right.
Because it's at the end of the year, and I mean, and it wasn't a payroll.
8 or 10 transactions a page, maybe.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But average is about 4 to 5. So.
How many transactions on a page?
Maybe 8 or 10, I think.
So I mean, I have quite a few that I have to get through to.
And that's true for both.
But as a percentage?
After.
Yeah, because it's like our batch is like $6 million, and like there's only like however many.
And a lot of times, I would think a lot of times we've got the same account string on multiple transactions, that's causing an issue.
Or like,
we fix the work order account string, and then like 30 transactions all become okay.
Yeah. That we might set up a new process.
Not always, but yeah, I mean.
That we're already incurred and move costs to a new account string.
Transaction date. I will definitely not want that on our adjustment thing if we can.
So I see there's nothing in this,
because they just cleared yesterday.
Yeah.
So what they would have is they would.
Stop working so hard.
There's several pages.
This is also in tax, I could probably basically break, but this is going against production. So there won't be anything here unless they screwed up today. So this is actually looking at live, so she can run it anytime she wants. And it's validating both the credit side and the debit side account strings. I think it's doing some other validations too. There's some basic logic, like you can't have this segment when that segment's populated. There's some logic with some other logic that it does too.
And there's several pages worth on this report, so if you keep clicking, you can see what it looks for on the other pages.
All right, we'll just go down real quick. I'm in Chrome. I usually go Firefox. There you go. So right now, this is validating. It validates in each transaction type. So it's looking first. Oh, here we got coverage. So, hello, it's miscellaneous cost. So what it does is it highlights the area that's a problem.
And this is just the future date, so that's why it's flagging it, because it's in the future, and it doesn't like that. It wants it to be today or earlier.
I think it's future or like within a year parameter or something.
Yep.
There's something I put on there because something happened and with a date, and I did this for Gail because she was not happy that it had happened, and so we put this in to make sure it never happened again. So it's not, some of these don't have to be corrected. They're more of a, hey, pay attention, is this really okay? Because really you shouldn't be filling out 7 months in advance.
So then you print a paper copy of this?
No, I do everything. I do. Gail used to, but I do everything electronically.
Okay, so you just leave this up then?
Yeah.
And then where do you go from here?
I have a split screen, so then I'll go to the work order, like I would pull up that work order that's listed. or you can look at the miscellaneous costs because you're there, so.
Work order.
And then.
What I'm worried about is miscellaneous costs won't be, there's no way that's gonna be in there, because I'm in test over here. So, so if she was looking at the work order. And we're in test, so it's a little box. In there. Well, it's only a few months old, it's just slow.
Do you have an old, we could put an old report.
I can also.
Yeah. But none of the reports that I save have anything on them. I just save them to show that they're clear. So I don't save I just keep refreshing until it's clear, just so I know. Because Michael wouldn't let me do an extract if I had any errors on there. He would be like, no, fix it. So.
All right, so I'm sorry, it's going to be really puffy.
You want me to get into production?
I can go into production too, and just go look out.
You're not really
I'm not really
doing
anything.
Right.
So it's, I didn't want to be in production while looking at configuration forms for the entire system.
Mitch McConnell wants to.
The language came out in that bill today, so they're probably offhand. I think somehow all the language in Trump's new healthcare bill was published today.
I heard you wanted to pass a law that had already been in place for 4 years.
20 years.
20 years, sorry, yeah.
All right, I'm just going to shut them down because it'll be easier.
We got something. I know. I'm on a news fast right now. I can't read it.
You sit home every night, close the internet, read the news, or listen to the news on the way home.
Listen to NPR on the way home.
Now I just have to turn off the radio.
All things considered.
You gotta listen for a few minutes.
I try, and then my blood pressure starts to
I know what you mean. I don't want to just completely put my head in the sand, but
But at the same time,
you're getting like fatigued.
And I still get snippets of it everywhere.
Yeah.
I can't escape totally.
I know, because even the classical station will come in with news.
Damn it.
What is this news? Just calming advertising.
I don't know why it won't let me run production.
we're just in production.
You didn't get the memo today? You didn't get the memo today?
Are you in, right?
Yeah. Logins. All access.
Are you in?
Are you in?
Oh, yeah.
Why don't we plug into him do we have a...
Oh, if you go into the go-to meeting, then we can just change you as the... Yep.
You want me to do what?
Do you want to show?
You have your invite up? Your calendar?
I do.
What you get for going in there?
Yeah. I was... Oh, it's not a hyperlink though.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's still fine.
I think it pushed me back into task.
Okay, she's in.
It was pushing me too fast. I was like, okay, one more time and they're going to lock my account.
Do they lock it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, if you...
I know.
And then I got to call down and I got to say, hey,
Easy Costa Rica.
Michael, can you help me? Alright, so this is the actual transaction that she would be looking at.
Okay.
So,
And you see the date,
I wish I could make
the transaction date that's flagging
In the
that.
future.
Yeah.
right.
So they keyed that in, and they maybe meant May 21st.
No, they probably mean September 2017 for like a delivery or, you know, like that's the date that they've scheduled it. And so they just want to put it in.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't, trust me.
They're charging ahead of time?
Yeah, it happens mostly with,
Yeah, so I was going to say I knew who it was going, but I was going to look anyway.
Waste is really the only people that do that.
Yeah,
And they have also done corrections to like really old stuff. Like, for example, yesterday was 2008 work order that they had open. It's just been a long-standing work order that they added miscellaneous costs to.
for a particular building that they go and do.
That's just been open, and that's what they gave her, and so she put it in, but it's a really old work order. So,
this is definitely an area where we could have a lot of opportunity to.
And I think, just really quick, there is still a need to be able to type in the date, just because if it did miss a month, you'd want it to still show as the transaction period, but we could put parameters.
Here's some parameters. You can't put a year more than 30 days,
or
more than 30 in the future, or something.
Or it would error when you
I can put
put
anything. So this is what she would go. She would correct this if it needed to be corrected. So let's say this said 2020 by accident.
Yeah.
But
it's a soft error though, so I can still do my extract on this last page. If anything comes up on there, it's not going to come up on like Michael's report. This is just a soft error, so I just ignore these because I know it's waste and they do this, and I just never.
So what happens with this dollar amount then? Does it actually hit the books in September and not May?
No, it hits now. It hits now.
But if you were to run
the miscellaneous charge shows the date, so if somebody did come back, I guess.
So when I run my report to look at May transactions and I look at all the miscellaneous costs,
that's included.
It is included. Well, then what's the date doing?
No, if you're looking at, so it depends on which field you're using.
It's a look back,
I guess. The DC extract number would reference when it went through the ledger, but then if you're looking at the transaction month, then it will pull.
Kind of like looking at the difference of the labor of the work date versus
but
bill date.
I usually use accounting fiscal date.
Then it would be the billing that happens today,
So
not then.
this is not something that you want to prevent them from doing. They still need to continue.
Oh, I would say prevent it if you can. This is how it's been, and it's
no
not.
parameters around the date. If they accidentally typed in 1917, it would be fine.
Yeah.
You want to say, when you go in and start a new one, your date should not be anywhere.
100 years in the past.
Just a little, and that's on all the date fields. I think we want some sort of
control.
That would be very
a little bit of helpful because a lot of them is just. Okay.
And waste might be the only group that has a problem with it.
There's a couple other ones that trickle in.
I think reuse sometimes.
That's kind of strong language to say they're the only one.
I think I had a couple
Mostly.
I'm trying to go back in the test if I'm looking at the production form. So, did you what? So she would correct those. She'd run it.
I would make all the corrections, and I just run the report since it's a live look at, Compass. I just run it till there's no errors, and then I know I can go ahead with my the extract process.
Okay. All right. And then after that, there's this other report, and this is actually now validating. There's an error flag that would show up on, so now it's taken that labor record and it's turned it into a labor billing transaction. These are looking at the actual transactions, and in Compass, it flags it if it found an error that it didn't like. And then sometimes you deal with those. I think you also get an email from Michael with that, for the same exact error.
Yes,
so
and I actually I haven't rolled back in a very long time because usually we catch everything.
Yeah.
So there is one option that, since it's looking at anything that hasn't been extracted, or export, is it the first one extract?
Extract and then export.
Anything that hasn't been exported yet, I believe. Like there's a check flag for that. There is an option to override and say that it already has been if we have an issue.
In PDI, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the back of Compass. That Mike had to do once because we did a whole bunch of labor corrections that were all $0 values, but it wouldn't push through.
That was a database thing. That's not application. He probably went in and hardcode fixed.
Okay.
So what happens here is when there's a couple date fields. There's when the system generated the billing transaction, and then it's still sitting in Compass. When they export it, there's an export. So there's an extract date, which takes it from the labor record and makes a labor billing record, and then there's an export date that says now we've taken it and it's successfully made it to this interface.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's going to make it to PeopleSoft.
Right.
It made it to PDI. And then they do magic to sync that all up, and that's beyond my
We had some in limbo, so, is that what you're talking about with Michael?
No, was that different? They were like, there were a bunch of corrections that were $0 transactions, but it wouldn't go through until we.
Because of the correction.
Yeah.
So, what the other things we were talking about, those reverse transactions, when we switch an account string on a work order, it takes all the transactions that are sitting in that billing table, flips them, says it's a reversing transaction, and then takes that extract date off the original source records, so that when they run this again, it will rebill those correctly, and then it'll then send them all, both transactions, the reversing and the new correction, will send both transactions that next time. So that's how they handle the reversing, is they take, so on a labor record, there's an extract date. Once it's got an extract date, it'll never be extracted again. They take the date off so that it can be pulled again. That's how that all works.
So, from my understanding, you probably then, what you're describing is before it goes into PeopleSoft, but what happens after it goes to PeopleSoft? Is you have to make that change?
It's a journal entry.
Do you mean a reversal, or?
What are you talking about for?
Well, yeah, can you go over that just one more time? I didn't.
So all right, am I in test? Good thing this is a test.
Yes.
So
I understand what she's talking about, reversals.
You reverse all the charges on the work order and correct the charge string, and then when she...
Oh, just one work order.
Yeah. So then when she runs the batch again, it'll take that extract date off of it, so then it'll tell it to kick through.
When you have to fix something.
So
Yes,
this is our work
exactly.
order.
You can reverse or not reverse.
Right. This is our billing.
We usually reverse.
This is why we can have multiple percentages, our full account string. If I go in here and I want to go edit, so this is how it does it. Each one is separate. That's why we can create a combination that's not valid. Let me see which. I guarantee that one's not.
That's the links.
So this is what pops up, and it says this change that you made. So our goal was to say, this is so cool. We really like this, but we only want financial people to be able to do this.
Yeah.
That was our goal in life, was to be able to put security around this functionality.
Yeah.
But what you can do is, if they say do not reverse, then any transactions that get billed from here on out use that account string. All previous transactions stay with the old account string. Nothing happens to them. If they reverse, it takes every single transaction on this work order in our billing table.
No matter from how old.
Doesn't matter how old, which is why we don't like people touching this.
Right. And why we don't like work orders that go forever.
So we have some that are now hitting that 17, 18 years old. It's just always open to transactions. Because they handle their reporting, and it's really bad.
They lie to me. I tell them to get rid of those old work orders.
Then you say, hey, can you give me an average age of this group? And I can tell you. So if they hit reverse every transaction in that table with this work order, they make a duplicate copy, and, well, in this case, flip, but in this case, they would basically credit the debit credit, put that in there for, the reason it's kind of weird is we don't allow negatives to go through. So we have a button that's switched that tells us no negatives go through, so it flips them. But it basically makes a reversing, thank you. And it creates that, and it just sits and waits, because it sits, and the enter date for that transaction is the day they hit reverse. And it sits in that table and waits until Desiree goes through and does it. So when they hit reverse, it duplicates and creates the offsetting transaction, and then it goes to all those source transactions and takes off the extract date. And then it sits.
Can I ask something too, if it's possible? So if finance does get the function, be the only ones to do this, which is awesome, that's fine. But otherwise, if it does, Compass currently, you can check and see who did it. So at least I have somebody to go harass or bother if it's, so if that is not possible, where it's only a finance function, if at least you can see who made the change, that makes it a lot easier when I have to.
And so if I'm going to just say do not reverse.
We never wanted this function. Of picking reverse and them going, and it going all the way back to.
I actually don't know the history on how that's been there for so long.
No, I think that it was something that was delivered with famous.
Okay. I do know that for the longest time we wanted security around it to turn it off.
Right.
So if I go here and I now change this.
Necessarily a feature that you want?
No,
Yeah.
You want this feature.
Yeah,
We want
but
it.
We're saying we want it, but
limiting the fixed a little.
we only want certain people to have access to it.
Because this is.
You don't want anybody besides you guys, because
No, I agree with that, but I don't think I want anything that goes back to the beginning of time. I mean, I would just want something that would do the transaction that we're working on right now.
In the current fiscal year.
you can select, something or
But I would,
Parameters around it.
We get a lot of departments who say this is wrong. I know we provided you this account string, but it's wrong.
When I change.
and they want you to retro
And they want.
Yeah, but so what's going to happen if all those work orders are closed anyway?
Yeah, so that's what
I mean, if we have work
off
tasks that are closed, because we're not going to, I don't think we're going to use work orders the same way we're using them right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you have to, when the stuff is closed, you still may have final interfacing that takes place.
I understand that, but I don't think this reverse function would work, would it? On closed stuff?
I don't know.
How often do you use the reverse function?
Constantly. I mean, it's a daily thing, almost.
And what's the #1 reason why?
Because the call center has no chart of accounts training, and we're given a set of numbers, and they just put them in, or they fat-fingered, and
But it's only with usually the current accounting period that they do this?
Well,
No.
usually the department, it's after the fact, and they see the charge on the wrong account string.
Well, this isn't ours.
And the call center's getting an account string from a non-accountant as well, so I think there's probably a combination of things that.
And I would say a lot happened in July when all of a sudden we realized, okay, there's a building, maybe it went down support, and we forgot to change the default, and we need to go retro all our stuff back.
Yeah,
And sometimes the error doesn't get caught until a little further in.
yeah, sometimes I review the financials with the district, and they're like, oh, that should have been paid by energy.
I think we did.
Did it already?
Okay.
I'll change.
No, you're right. I was waiting for close.
So,
or like
1 or 2 months,
Or like sponsored projects, they don't always have like their charge strings or funding through before the work starts, and they'll charge it to somewhere in their department, and then
they're like, we'll pay for it until we get the charge string, and when they get it.
I have on here that we have
Kim, since we're talking about debits and credits in this meeting, and you may already know this, but that screen that she was just showing you with that, so that's what drives the debit. So all of our debits are coming from the work order, and that's the expense side, and then the revenue side, the credit, comes from the crew
For labor.
that the employee's labor is associated with.
Right. So I'll show you real quick. So you know how you would go in and configure your work group?
So debits, yeah.
I'm going to leave this up so I have it.
Debits, I completely understand. I don't know how you get credit.
So I'll show you here right now. So if we go in here to configuration, it basically, we go in, let me figure out where it is. Oh, no. It's going to take me just a second. See, there's this one. Yep. Okay, so if we're looking at labor, I'm looking at labor charges. And I'm going to see if we view it. So this is for labor charges, and it's going to say that its debit account comes from the maintenance billing group. That is the work order.
The work order.
Okay.
We're saying now, because we can pick these, the credit for us is coming from the crew account group.
Okay.
And that crew account group is grabbing the crew on the employee. It's the employee's crew that's stamped on the labor record. So it's not their employee crew on their personnel record. It's what was stamped on the labor record when the labor record was put in place. So then what we go is we go into, get the personnel. So an administrator comes in, I think also payroll can do this, and we have all these crews. So these are work groups. So if I go through and grab, let me get one that's a team. Here. So this tells me, here are all the people.
Payroll does do this. Nobody else does it.
Occasionally they have me do it, but it's out beside Mike, and I know when I'll touch these.
Right.
So every once in a while, Mike has me set something. It's through payroll instruction that these changes all get made. Is that better? Yeah. So when we go and set this one up, we go in, and remember we were talking about rates. This is that generic average. It's not the employee. It's one for something else. There's an account, and I have an account form open in other spots. So I got to shut that down. This is one of our big pains in too many keys when we get done. Normally, it doesn't let me open up a lot of configuration from those. All right. So we go in, and for this, we've configured, because we can configure whether an account on a type of object can be a multi-account or not. For cruise, we said no, you can have one and one account only. So we've turned off the feature to let this have multiple and split. Okay. We can turn it back on. We've just never had it on. So, because we can configure each of these account groups and say what they allow, what they don't allow, default segments. There's a lot of stuff it does, we just don't do.
But the base question for me is,
so
what constitutes credit? Like, why are they getting a credit back?
So we have like a billing rate. Let's say, for my example, we have a pipe fitter, and he's $100 an hour. So all the pipe fitters are $100 an hour. So I'm Joe Schmo, the pipe fitter, and I work 1 hour, and I charge this work order. My crew is driving the revenue side of that transaction, and my district where I'm based on my crew, gets a $100 credit, and the work order gets a $100 debit or expense.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So we're really just reattributing the cost of that time.
Redistributing, yeah.
Yeah,
so
and it's $100 and $100.
So this pipe fitter might be working on a supported building and he's working on his own team, so it's right that his payroll cost is already getting charged to his team, and we're just redistributing the cost. If he's working on supported work, it's a debit and a credit to his same team, then there's really no impact.
Okay.
If he's doing work somewhere else, though, then that's where we're charging somebody else, and his crew is still getting the credit then for that time.
I'm sorry, this is really confusing. Andrew, can you?
We're gonna just have to explain Compass accounting to you.
Yeah, because I mean, okay. Yeah.
So
get the sock puppets out.
Careful to think of it as like a journal entry debit and credit versus like a credit as like a change in something like that.
There's got to be something to offset it.
This is your financial statement at the end of the month, and you have one employee and he worked 1 hour on one work order, and it was his own team. So, Joe Pipe Fitter payroll, and we pay the guy $65 an hour. So payroll gets debited for $65. And then he puts that hour of time on his work order that he's charging, and there's a labor expense, and that gets debited for $100 because that's his bill rate. The reason that's higher is because it includes overhead, right?
Okay.
It's fringe benefits, the cost of his truck, office supplies. And then because the debits have to equal the credits, there's also an hour's worth of revenue that is also billed to the same place, and it is a credit to the same department code or organization code or whatever you want to call it. So at the end of the day, you've got $65 worth of net expense because you had to pay the guy.
the credit.
It's like a journal entry, really, yeah.
Yeah, so like this is an account number that starts with
The credit assumes that all those other costs are in the same department where the $100 is coming out of.
Right.
Right, yeah.
Those are the account numbers that are.
Got it.
Generally,
And the
yeah.
whole thing is, like
Team 1 or whatever.
Let's say Team 1 maintenance or something like that.
So he's working on a supported building. That's his team's building. So we kind of orient buildings by depth IDs.
Right.
So if he were to come in and the department needed his services, whatever time he puts into the system, his depth ID is getting a credit for it for all the hours. It's just a question of where that expense is going, that $100 expense.
And the work order will drive that based on the billing.
So if some department, pipe fitter is probably not a great example because that's usually supported work, but if a department needed some shelving hung or whatever, it's not really supported work that we would charge them for that, then that debit, that $100 debit would be going to another account stream, a departmental account stream.
Yeah, and then you'd only have $35 on the bottom line.
they would effectively get charged for FM overhead proportional to the time that we're charging them for.
Okay. Yeah, I get the, so I get the revenues, I get that whole piece of it, right? I guess I'm looking at it from a straight, you know, balance sheet perspective when you're interfacing back with PeopleSoft, right? What are you sending PeopleSoft? Because this is all internal to.
No, we're sending all of it.
Oh, you're sending it all.
That's why we have to do every payroll, because there's so many transactions on there. PeopleSoft can only handle one at a time.
Gotcha.
And for reporting, you just pull the account and you'll be able to say, okay.
Yeah, you look in your PeopleSoft general ledger and those account numbers and you'll see those transactions.
Yep. Lots of them.
Yeah.
But you're not giving them the rate, the Joe pipe fitter rate.
No.
No. That's
It's
just
the $100.
right.
Yeah.
They're just seeing the 100.
Yep.
That's it. Good.
I think there's some bundling
That's
too.
what the customers.
Right.
Okay, because I was going to say no.
The customer doesn't have to worry about how much we pay them.
Right. Exactly.
And I think we bundle. So if you had 100 labor transactions against someone's account for that particular week, that's why they have.
It just rolls up.
It's one labor record, doesn't it? Because I thought it has one number, one JVFMT number for multiples, and that's why they come in our system to be able to figure out what the heck we just charged them 500 for.
Yes, because if we have to do like a journal entry in Compass to correct it, we have to correct every single line.
Every labor transaction.
Yep.
Hey, Danielle.
But I'm not completely familiar with that.
What if it's on the system?
Yes.
Account, same transaction type.
My apologies, I just realized that based on our phone call yesterday, we were able to take most of the leasing items from a 4 to another number, and we were just going to talk about 4s today, so actually didn't need you to join. I'm so sorry, but at least you got, you know, to kind of hear the admin conversation.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
So, kind of what we're showing on the crew, where you have a credit, when you go in and configure each of those these entries, it's the same for every single thing. So for an invoice, this one will tell you that it's going to get its, the invoice is going to come from that system expense account group, which is its own configuration, and it's got its own billing information there. So what happens is when...
Sorry, you sent me, and I apologize if I missed it, a list of the credit accounts and debit accounts?
What we currently are using is in one of the appendices.
In the playbook.
And there's two sets. There's these, which are used for sending to PeopleSoft for the GL transactions, and the same concept for AP. So there's a second chunk for AP.
Okay.
But it does it for keys. Every single transaction type, anytime we have a transaction type, we define where it gets its credits and debits. And so we were talking a little bit yesterday about miscellaneous cost, which is the adjustments. And so and it's hard to, just sort of see it, but this is how we configure our cost types. You put in a cost type, a description. Here is that. We don't really do markups, but if it had a rate, this is the unit of measure. Active, currently this is not an active unit.
So how often do you add cost types?
A few a year.
I've never set one up. We've been using the same ones for many years.
Like Reuse just had some because they're doing delivery or pickup of stuff, so.
There's a lot of them out there, yeah. There's probably, I don't know, 100 out there maybe?
Hundreds.
Yeah.
So the wrench that I'd like to throw in here is, we only have this one revenue account, but I would like to have more than one based on if it's supported work or not supported work. Because we have a really hard time trying to figure out really how much revenue our districts are making. But I'm afraid that if we do that they'll make us set up an ISO for each district.
No, they shouldn't.
We've got 1 minute.
And then I think you'd have to have another condition that if it was...
It'd be too complicated for them.
But
where is the supported, how's the supported work paid for?
How does
like, is that like just your general revenue budget, and if it's not supported, it comes from the department?
Well,
No, it's more complicated than that. We'll explain to you, but it doesn't really have any impact on how we.
But that is something that you wanna.
Well, if we could, it would be better, because right now, you have to go through a lot, you have to run a lot of reports to try to figure out what revenue really is, and I don't know that we ever really do know what true revenue to other customers.
Yeah, I mean, we have a monthly revenue report that we review with the team every month, and it shows how much revenue they got from billing people outside of their own little area.
But
so
it's
if
still
West Bank,
hard to run. I mean, it has to come out of Compass. You can never see it in the general ledger.
yeah,
True.
You don't see it on the, and really it's looking at the debit IDs on the debit and the credit to build that relationship, whether we're charging ourselves or whether we're charging somebody else, really drives whether it's a revenue transaction or not. So if we build all of that into the cost code structure, then maybe something could be done to.
A little big logic building.
Yeah.
Like that church. It is still a stuck.
Unfortunately, we are at our end.
We could just talk debits and credits all day.
Andrew, will you get the sock puppet up?
interpretive dance.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everybody. I will hopefully have this recording up and posted soon, and I'll send an email out when that's ready. Because I know everyone's watch it all over again, so thank you all.
A while ago.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Tracy and Danielle.